So, I want to talk a little bit about the media, specifically mainstream media. And almost all the media that you see today on television, all television media, are corporations of some kind. And as we've discussed on the show before, the only purpose of a corporation is to make money. So, of a public corporation is to make money, right? If you have shareholders, you are legally obligated to create value for those shareholders. And if you don't create value for those shareholders will throw out your executive team via the board of directors, right? Because the board of directors have to be elected. So if they're able to do that, they're able to fundamentally steer the company. If profits aren't coming in all the time, then the incentives of the company are always to create more profit, right? So because of this, you have to the media has to create revenue, and the way they create revenue is through advertising, right? So you see on TV when you're watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, ads will come on between segments, right? And that's perfectly normal. Everyone's used to seeing ads. However, in order for that ad space to be there, someone has to pay money to the corporation to do that. So, and especially if this company wants lots of ads, and they're going to put a lot of money in. So, do you think that might alter the news coverage? Imagine you are, I don't know, say ExxonMobil, and you buy a bunch of media advertisements. Do you think the media is going to be critical of ExxonMobil in their stories? Probably not. I mean, if I was an ExxonMobil executive and I just given a bunch of money to a news organization and I was watching that news organization's channel and I see bad news coverage about ExxonMobil, I think I'd probably call them and say, we're no longer interested in advertising here, right? Because you don't want to advertise at a place that makes you look bad. So, whether the hosts are thinking of themselves or the people who write the speeches or the executives, someone at the company is probably thinking about, well, we get advertisers from XYZ Corporation. We want to make sure that our coverage of things that involve them is either neutral or positive. Because if it's negative, if it's explicitly negative, it's very likely that those corporations pull their money out. And if they pull their money out, you start to lose your profits. And of course, those people who are sitting at the top of the organization are very worried about their jobs, right? Because the board will just chuck them out if there's not enough profit coming in. So you can see that as long as you have this incentive, by the way, it's the same thing with money in politics, right? It's essentially the same thing as money in politics, but instead of changing the vote of a politician, it changes the coverage of the media. These advertisements, almost regardless of where they're coming from, bias media coverage. And they might do it in small ways, and they might do it in huge ways. But if you take money from a corporation and you continually, and you're concerned about what that corporation might think of your coverage, you're definitely going to alter your coverage to make sure that the corporation doesn't think badly of your coverage, right? So one of the reasons that people, in my opinion, that people love independent media so much is because they kind of see through this, right? They see through the bullshit about corporate news. There's no incentive for most people who are making news or talking opinion on YouTube or anywhere else, myself included, to treat any of these genuinely bad corporations with any level of goodwill, because they don't pay us, right? We see things as we believe they are, and we tell them to you, our audience. This is why that independent media has really taken off, because, well, there's a lot of reasons, right? People aren't just people aren't watching TV anymore. Cable is dying, yada yada yada. There's actually a ton of reasons, but one of the main reasons, in my humble opinion, is because it's very obvious to people that the issues just aren't being covered in a way that's, well, fair, like objective, because those corporations are altering the way that they talk about these issues to fit the whims of their advertisers. Now, there are ways to get ad revenue and not have these issues come up as directly anyway. YouTube actually has a great way of doing this, so they had before they defunded most of news and politics, which was YouTube handles all the advertising as the platform, and they just sprinkle ads on random videos. They just an ad here, an ad there. You can kind of target it a little bit, but for the most part, you know, ads end up in categories of videos, and that's where the ad plays. And the partner, the YouTube partner, as in the YouTube creator, gets money from that, and the creator never has to talk to the advertiser. There's an intermediary there. Now, it's hard to know if a corporation could do this, right? Because a lot of this is more direct, but I have to assume it's possible. Now, mind you, with the reach these corporations have, and the fact that you're dealing with kind of individualized coverage, it might be more difficult to do that and create a third party buffer in between. And even if that was the case and it worked perfectly and the host never had to talk to the advertiser or the executives never had to talk to the advertiser, it's still entirely possible the advertiser would pull their advertising if they saw a negative story about them. So I think, it's much more difficult, I think, for corporate media to do that. But the real solution is to just not have a corporate media, to have all media be not for profit. So, sure, money can come in and things like that, but either it's funded by independent pools of money at the state or federal level, or media is funded by subscribers, or it's funded in some other way that does not allow for the people at the heads of these organizations to be constantly thinking about, hey, if we cover this news story, are our biggest advertisers going to pull out, right? And by the way, we know that this affects businesses from a firsthand example, because if you look at some of the Fox News hosts that have been canceled, as it were, Sean Hannity, right? He had, or whatever. But the number one way that people get at these hosts is to call and tell them, hey, pull your advertisers, this person, or call the advertiser and say, hey, you should pull your ads from this show because they're saying these kinds of things and it's bad because associated with your brand. So this is also kind of, a social issues weapon, as it were. So there is some utility here from kind of a base, non-economic perspective, trying to change the way that things are covered. But if it can happen one way, it can happen the other way too, right? So all I guess I'm trying to get people to recognize is that anytime you have a corporate media like we have in the US, you're going to get these issues of bias and you're going to get these coverage manipulations based on the advertising that's out there. I think there are solutions. I've listed them for you, but we're probably not going to have that in this country because there is a vested interest for a lot of these corporations in keeping these corporate media afloat, right? Especially because they're watched by so many people, for better or for worse. And they do essentially run cover for a lot of these corporations who are inherently bad by the nature of their business or just by the nature of their existence. And by the way, for use as politicians too, right? Now, I don't know why that would be. I can speculate that perhaps the more do nothing politicians that corporate media defends, the less gets done and the less it actually rocks the boat, which gives the advertisers more money for them to pump into the system. That's all speculation. I don't have any proof of that. But you do have to admit it kind of makes sense, right? That would be some of the motivation there for kind of defending these do nothing politicians. So this segment's kind of gone on way too long, but essentially, bottom line, money in media changes the coverage. If you want coverage that is less biased, you need to actually find the funding sources of your media and evaluate them on that way. Oh, no, one last thing, mini rant here. So there is this organization, I do not know what they're called, but they create this giant list of media organizations based on truth versus opinion and left versus right. That chart is total bullshit. It's entirely wrong. One, it gets the left-right spectrum entirely backwards. And two, it does not account for the inherent corruption of corporate media. So what they're giving you is the truth that someone else wants you to know. Okay, that's not a conspiracy. I just demonstrated how it's true. So those things that come out, check your bias, news reporting, those are bullshit. Ignore them. Don't share them on Facebook. Don't talk about them with people. It's bullshit. They're pumped up. They are essentially doing the propagandistic work of corporations to get you to watch corporate media who are not going to criticize corporations. Sorry, is what it is.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.